Hey everyone! Welcome to The Young and the Restless. I'm Jane, and I'm so excited to have you here. If you love Young and the Restless, then you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Alright, let's dive right in. According to rumors for The Young and the Restless, Audra Charles will find out at Vibrante that she is definitely out. Let's discuss how it will all play out because Victor Newman is going to fire this scheming individual for colliding with Kyle Abbott. Victor will argue that Audra's time is up during the week of August 4th to 8th. There will be repercussions because Audra did not separate Kyle and Claire Newman by the deadline. Victor made it apparent right away what would happen if Audra failed to fulfill her commitments. The Vibrante arrangement has always been conditioned on Audra destroying the romance between Claire and Kyle. Audra repeatedly assured Victor that she could pull this off, acting as though Kyle would be putty in her hands. Kyle, on the other hand, discovered Audra's seduction scheme and planned a trap for her. In the end, it was all for show, even though Kyle kissed Audra and nearly betrayed her in bed. In the end, Kyle made fun of Audra for her failure and then boasted to Victor about it as well. Even though Audra tries to negotiate her way out of losing her job, Victor will actually fire her on the August 6th episode. Victor will chastise Audra for wasting his time and doing nothing. According to YNR spoilers, Audra will discover that Vibrante is out. Since Vibrante is a useless startup that Victor doesn't really desire, it might potentially go out of business completely. The only reason this cosmetics company exists is because Victor wanted a reward to persuade Audra to assist him in his plan to split up with Kyle and Claire. If Victor doesn't want to add salt to the wound by giving it to someone else and letting it flourish under a different leader, it might go right away. In any event, Victor will fire Audra for disappointing him, marking the beginning of her demise. From there, Audra might lose Nate Hastings as well because he will keep asking questions. When Kyle eventually tells Claire the truth, Nate will wonder how it all went wrong and might finally receive his answer. Audra won't be able to avoid the fallout for long because the truth about what transpired in Nice is soon to be revealed. According to previews on The Young and the Restless, Audra will lose his temper when his agreement with Victor breaks down. Playing the game according to her own rules had always been Audra Charles's style. Sharp, calm, sexy when needed, and vicious when provoked, she had risen through the ranks of Genoa City with a combination of cunning and cunning that few could equal. However, the oxygen grew thinner as she ascended higher, making her companionship riskier. She had been treading carefully in Victor Newman's orbit for months, balancing ambition, secrets, and relationships that changed like sand under her fancy shoes. The day finally arrived when she was overtaken by the game. Inside Newman Towers, the morning air was heavy with stress. The doors to Victor's executive room were ominously open, the buzz was more subdued than usual, and the eyes of passing assistants were fixed on the ground. Victor Newman personally summoned you, and everyone understood what that meant. It wasn't a compliment. It was a judgment call. With her customary composure, Audra entered the room with a carefully neutral smile and immaculate red lipstick. When she walked in, Victor remained motionless. His steely eyes were fixed on a document in his hand as he sat behind his enormous desk. He made no motion for her to take a seat. That was enough to say it all. The silent hum of the room stretched out like a blade across her spine as she stood still and watched him. Victor didn't look up for a long time. "You told me falsehoods," he said. He didn't speak loudly. It wasn't necessary. That quiet voice was more powerful than a shout. Despite her heart thumping in her chest, Audra remained silent. "What, precisely?" "Measuring," she asked. "Be careful how you answer that." Victor stood at that moment, moving slowly around the desk in the methodical manner of someone who has witnessed the downfall of 100 plotters. He was holding a huge folder filled with damaging printouts, emails, and reports. "You gave me manipulated data. You didn't disclose Tucker's whereabouts. You engaged in side business. And worst of all, she tensed a little, her jaw clenching, as he continued, his voice intensifying, "You thought I wouldn't find out." Although she was aware that she was skating on the edge, she had trusted, no, she had banked on, that Victor would require her cunning, her access, and her skill. That in return for outcomes, he would ignore the shaky ethics. However, she had made a mistake. And he no longer had the expression of a disgruntled boss in his eyes. A lion was glaring down at its victim. With a faint undertone of disobedience, she finally answered, "I did what I had to." "You want Tucker's departure. I have leverage for you." His interruption sliced like a knife. "I protected your company, you protected yourself. You worked to advance your own agenda, not mine. And it is unforgivable," he said in a low, lethal voice. She remained silent for a moment. Victor Newman was no longer satisfied with an apology. He was imposing punishment, not seeking remorse. "You're finished here," he stated bluntly. "Pack your workspace." Even though she saw the hand raised, Audra blinked slowly as the words hit her like a smack. "Security will escort you out within the hour." Dismissed. As simple as that. No second opportunity. No haggling. She didn't plead. He wouldn't get the satisfaction from her. "You're committing an error," she stated coolly. Victor yelled, "In just 6 months, I've produced more results than some of your loyalists have in 6 years, and in just 6 minutes, you've damaged my trust. Loyalty is important." The stillness that followed was deafening. "You were a useful piece on the board, but I don't keep traitors in my house." Audra turned slowly, her back stiff, her shoes clicking on the shiny floor. She would never regain her dignity if she allowed herself to break now, in front of him. With the gaze of the Newman staff following her like whispers, she left without saying anything. Her assistant looked up with surprise at her office. "Is everything all right?" she inquired uneasily. "Simply put, start packing," Audra advised. It was a cruel sort of drama, the walk of shame through Newman Towers. She was surrounded by 2 security officers, but she made no effort to resist. With her phone in her hand and her distinctive black coat slung over one arm, she maintained a proud stance. Her face finally changed as the elevator doors closed, her jaw tense, her eyes frigid, her lips squeezed together. Not damaged. Not quite yet. The sun was harsh and blinding outside. Her career burned behind her, and the world went on. In Genoa City, news spread quickly, and before the hour was over, rumors were circulating. A bartender at Society told Nate Hastings about it. During a board meeting, Nick Newman received the ping. It came from a call that Nicky wasn't supposed to hear. The next big story would be Victor Newman showing off his power once more, a corporate shakeup, and the removal of a trusted executive. On the inside, though, Audra wasn't considering the consequences. Her next move was already in her mind. She wasn't made to vanish. She was designed to be innovative. The treachery still hurt more than she had anticipated. She had dreaded Victor in her own way and admired him. However, she had misjudged his value of obedience. She had switched from playing for the team to playing for herself at some point. It had given her strength. She had become expendable as well. She no longer had any pals in Newman, a seat at the table, or any influence from the outside. Tucker, too? She was unlikely to be taken back by Tucker McCall either. After the games she had played with him, he would view her fall as poetic justice. After playing both sides, neither side wanted her anymore. She wouldn't stay down, though. She wasn't like that. By evening, Audra found herself in her luxury apartment, sipping a glass of scotch while her phone rang with calls from reporters, opportunists, and even adversaries who wanted to brag. She disregarded them all. She pondered who she would be tomorrow while she watched the city lights flicker beneath her windows. The con artist was out of a job. The survivor, however, stayed. And sometimes it was all you needed in Genoa City. What she knew would be useful to someone. Her edge would be useful to someone. And soon, someone would be stupid enough to undervalue her once more. And she would be prepared when that occurred. Today, Victor Newman had created a formidable foe. He may not give a damn. However, Audra Charles never stayed out for very long. Employees and competitors alike were left reeling from the abrupt change in leadership when Audra abruptly left Newman Enterprises, sending shockwaves through the corporate world. She had been a powerful presence for years, inspiring fear and awe with her keen intuition and cunning tactics. However, even the most shrewd players may be outwitted in the competitive world of high-stakes business. With her cunning, Victor Newman, the renowned tycoon whose name was synonymous with power, had finally had enough. For months, the tension between them had been steadily increasing until it exploded in a dramatic altercation. Audra had always been careful to avoid crossing the line between loyalty and ambition, but this time she had gone too far. The specifics were still unknown, whether it was a backroom arrangement with a rival or an effort to weaken Victor's position of power. However, it was evident that Victor had already decided that Audra was out and that there would be no second chances. Whispered in low voices during coffee breaks and discussed in frantic, behind closed-door meetings, the word spread like wildfire across the office hallways. While some dreaded the consequences of losing such a significant player, others hailed it as a long-overdue reckoning. Many would hurry to fill the void left by Audra's absence since she had built alliances. Ever the thinker, Victor probably had a plan, but the abruptness of her departure implied that even he had reached his breaking point. The boardroom, which had previously served as a platform for Audra's strategic moves, would now need to adapt to a new dynamic. In the meantime, this action strengthened Victor's standing as an unyielding leader. Very few people dared to cross him, and those who did hardly ever made it out alive. After decades of corporate battle, he developed an almost amazing ability to read people and predict their next movements. However, firing Audra couldn't have been a simple choice, especially for Victor, who has a great deal of expertise. She was intelligent, resourceful, and loyal when it was convenient for her. But none of that mattered in the end. Control was the foundation of Victor's empire, and anyone who challenged it had to be eliminated, regardless of how useful they seemed. Knowing that every decision made at Newman Enterprises had an impact on other industries, the business community kept a careful eye on the company. Rivals questioned if this was an indication of instability or a planned purge to bolster Victor's tight group. Investors would require confirmation that the business remained stable because they are always wary of the first sign of trouble. It was unclear what Audra would do next. Industry insiders conjectured about her potential destination because she wasn't the kind to blend in with the background. Would she work for a competitor's company, using her insider knowledge of Newman Enterprises to get even with Victor? Or would she pave her own way, creating something entirely from scratch? There was no doubt that Victor's decision to fire Audra would not go unanswered, and she would not lose gracefully. Rivals were the lifeblood of the corporate world, and this one had all the ingredients for a spectacular confrontation. Lawyers were probably already working behind the scenes, analyzing non-compete agreements and contracts to assess the extent of Audra's potential harm. As always the chess master, Victor had likely expected this as well, but in the high-stakes match they played, there were always factors that were out of his control. It was not simply the two of them who were affected. Workers who had sided with Audra were now in a vulnerable situation, uncertain if they would be seen as possible threats or collateral damage. Corporate loyalty was erratic, and relationships would quickly change following such a significant departure. While some might start covertly updating their resumes, others could take advantage of the chance to show Victor how valuable they are. There was a lot of stress in the office, and there were always unanswered questions. Who would replace Audra? Would Victor promote from within or bring in an outsider? Above all, what did this signify for Newman Enterprises' future? For his part, Victor didn't reveal anything. In his restrained public remarks, he emphasized the company's strength and his dedication to its ongoing success. However, many who knew him well were able to decipher his intentions. This was a personal matter as much as a commercial one. Victor's remarks served as a reminder to everyone of his total power after Audra challenged him in a way that few dared. No one was indispensable, and that was the plain message. Despite his might, Victor was not perfect. The timing of Audra's departure couldn't have been worse, and it left a void that would be difficult to fill. The abrupt death of a top executive threatened to upset delicate discussions as the company was involved in a number of high-profile acquisitions. Victor would have to move fast to boost confidence because rivals would sense blood in the water. Rumors concerning possible successors circulated in the days that followed. Some speculated about a surprise appointment from outside the family, while others murmured that Victoria Newman might take on a more significant role. In a dynasty like the Newmans, blood ties were difficult to overlook, but Victor had always placed a higher priority on merit than nepotism. Then came the wild-card contenders, lesser-known business leaders who had been patiently awaiting their chance to shine. Audra's replacement would require a unique combination of intelligence and unwavering loyalty, which is uncommon in the viper's nest of business politics. Those who had profited from Audra's favor, her allies, were left in a state of confusion. While some might unavoidably try to put some distance between themselves and Victor, others could try to use their relationships with her as a way to silently criticize his choice. The company's power dynamics were shifting, and in a setting like that, even minor decisions might have big repercussions. Despite their outward support for Victor, the board would surely be evaluating the matter in private. Stock prices may be impacted by any indication of internal conflict, and shareholders desired stability. Whether this was a minor setback or the start of a more serious collapse would depend on Victor's capacity to handle the situation. The story was widely covered by the media outside of Newman Enterprises. Every potential perspective was examined by business analysts, from Victor's management style to Audra's purported errors. Whether this was an indication of the old guard holding on to power or a necessary purge to keep the company flexible was up for debate on talk shows. Always aware of the media, Audra might even take advantage of the attention by fabricating a story that portrayed her as the victim of corporate manipulation. Victor would respond with his own spin, having long practiced the art of managing his public persona. The conflict was being fought not only in boardrooms but also in the court of public opinion, on social media, and in headlines. One thing became evident as the dust settled: the game was far from over. The dismissal of Audra marked the start of a new chapter that would push the boundaries of Victor's power and Audra's fortitude. Nothing was more popular in the corporate world than a well-publicized rivalry, and this one had all the makings of a classic. The tale of power, treachery, and retaliation was as old as commerce itself. And the stakes had never been higher in the world of Newman Enterprises, where one choice could make or break a fortune. Ever the warrior, Audra refused to leave without a fight once Victor had put his line in the sand. The following move was hers, and the chessboard was set. Few things may shake a company as much as the abrupt dismissal of a major executive in the high-stakes world of corporate intrigue, power conflicts, and ruthless ambition. Audra is officially out. Victor fires schemer was a recent bombshell news that sent shockwaves through the business world, leaving competitors, employees, and industry analysts frantically trying to figure out what it means. The dramatic repercussions of Audra's sudden departure, Victor's firm decision to fire a suspected schemer, and the wider implications for the company's future will all be covered in this 5,000-word in-depth analysis. We will analyze the events leading up to this seismic change, the major people involved, and the implications for the future balance of power, from strategic miscalculations to covert betrayals. Audra's ascent and decline, a betrayal of a loyalist? Audra has long been regarded as a strategic genius with unmatched influence within the organization, as well as a trusted confidant. She was invaluable, until now, because of her keen intuition and adeptness at handling business politics. Why was she fired so abruptly? Was it a deliberate attempt to consolidate power, a personal grudge, or a conflict of vision? According to rumors, a competing group within the organization that viewed AUDRA'S increasing power as a threat planned her downfall. Others surmised that Victor, the mysterious commander at the top, had become suspicious of her aspirations. Her departure signifies the end of an era and the start of a perilous new one, regardless of the truth. Victor's cruel choice, getting rid of the schemer. This audacious action has solidified Victor's standing as a tough leader. His decision to fire the accused schemer, a mysterious individual who had been influencing events behind the scenes, makes it quite evident that disloyalty would not be accepted. However, who was this con artist and how intricate were their schemes? According to some sources, the con artist had been playing both sides, giving rivals information while feigning to be in Victor's best interests. Some people think Victor was just using this as a preemptive strike to get rid of any possible threats before they could attack first. In any event, the execution was a clear demonstration of authority, fast and brutal. The repercussions, disorder, possibility, and the battle for domination. There is no denying the power vacuum now that AUDRA and the schemer are gone. Who is going to fill the gap? Will Victor's inner circle stick by him, or will there be new opponents? Now that the corporation is at a turning point, will this purge improve its standing, or has Victor unintentionally hurt his own empire? Shareholders are demanding explanations, competitors are swarming like vultures, and employees are left to wonder about their own security. Nobody could have predicted how the company's future would be shaped by the aftermath from these firings.